The city of Mapleton erupted in chaos as dozens of pickup trucks carrying armed men flooded the streets. Their vehicles formed makeshift barricades across neighborhood entrances, and their weapons, assault rifles, shotguns, and handguns gleamed under the afternoon sun. Residents peered anxiously through windows as these self-appointed guardians established checkpoints, demanding identification from anyone attempting to enter or leave. By sunset, neighbors were dragging furniture to barricade doors. The wail of distant sirens punctuated the air, and social media blazed with videos of confrontations between citizens and the armed militia. The governor's announcement crackled through emergency broadcasts. The National Guard had been mobilized. Mapleton, once celebrated for its peaceful suburban charm, now resembled a war zone. 2 weeks earlier, the Hakim family had been arranging furniture in their new living room, their faces bright with optimism. Tariq Hakim guided his son Zain in hanging a framed family photograph, their first decoration, in the modest 2-story home they'd purchased after 8 years of saving. The house needed work, peeling paint, outdated fixtures, and a lawn that had surrendered to weeds long ago. But none of that diminished their pride. "This is the beginning of our American story," Tariq told his children as sunlight filtered through the dusty windows. His wife, Amira, arranged cushions on the worn sofa they'd brought from their apartment, creating an island of familiarity in their new space. "The kitchen needs the most work," she said, running her hand along a countertop with faded laminate. "But imagine what it will become." Their daughter, Layla, a high school sophomore, sat cross-legged on the floor, unpacking books. "Do you think the neighbors will be nice? Everyone looks so different here." "That's the beauty of this country," Tariq replied, his voice carrying the faint accent of his homeland. "Different people living together, building something better than what they could build alone." He didn't mention the sacrifices they'd made to reach this moment, his 2 jobs, Amira's night classes to improve her English, the cramped apartment they'd shared for nearly a decade since arriving as refugees. The Hakims spent that first weekend working on the house, Tariq and Zain repairing the sagging front steps, while Amira and Layla scrubbed the kitchen cabinets. Several neighbors walked by, some nodding politely, others staring with undisguised curiosity. An elderly man named Walter from next door brought over homemade lemonade, welcomed them to Oak Ridge Estates, and offered to lend Tariq tools whenever needed. "Don't mind some of the others," Walter had said quietly. "They're just not used to change. They'll come around." But one neighbor didn't walk over to introduce herself, Patricia Whitman, who watched the new family from behind her living room curtains. Patricia, known to many in the community as a woman who frequently demanded to speak to the manager, observed with mounting suspicion as the Hakims moved in. She noted the foreign language conversations between family members, the unusual spices wafting from their kitchen, and what she considered suspicious late-night activity when Tariq returned from his evening shift at the hospital where he worked as a custodian. "There's something not right about them," Patricia told her husband Greg over dinner. "Why would they move here? To this neighborhood specifically? We should be careful." Greg barely looked up from his phone. "They're just people. Patty, leave them be." But Patricia couldn't leave it alone. The next morning, she joined her regular coffee group at Diane's house 3 doors down. 5 women sat around Diane's kitchen table, steam rising from mugs of coffee as Patricia entered, fashionably late as usual. "Have you all met the new neighbors?" she asked, settling into her usual chair. When the others shook their heads, she leaned forward. "Well, they're Middle Eastern. Very strange hours. The man is gone most nights, who knows where, and they've been taking pictures of all the houses on the street." "Pictures?" asked Diane, brow furrowing. "Are you sure?" "Positive. I saw the boy with a camera yesterday. Why would they need photos of their neighbors' houses? And they get a lot of packages. A lot." What Patricia didn't mention was that Zane was taking photography classes at community college, documenting architectural details for a project. The packages were supplies for their home renovation. But in Patricia's mind, these fragments formed a troubling mosaic. Over the next few days, Patricia's whispers spread through the neighborhood like poison. She mentioned unusual gatherings when Tarek's brother visited with his family. She pointed out the strange smells of Amira's cooking. She noted how Tarek would sometimes walk around the neighborhood in the evening, surveilling, she called it, though he was simply trying to meet neighbors and get exercise after long shifts. A week after the Hakims moved in, Patricia created a private neighborhood Facebook group titled Oak Ridge Security Concerns. Her first post included a blurry photo of Tariq walking down the street, taken from her living room window. "Just keeping an eye on suspicious activity in our neighborhood," she wrote. "Better safe than sorry in these dangerous times." The comments accumulated quickly. "I saw him taking something from Walter's garage yesterday. Did anyone run a background check before they moved in? My cousin works for Homeland Security and says we should report anything unusual." No one mentioned that Walter had lent Tariq a lawnmower. No one asked if Patricia had introduced herself to the new family. Fear travels faster than facts. And by the weekend, dozens of neighbors were exchanging theories about the Hakim's presence in their community. The rumors might have eventually dissipated, if not for what happened on Sunday morning. Tariq's brother arrived with his family, bringing furniture and houseplants as gifts for the new home. Several male cousins came to help with repairs. They spoke animatedly in their native language as they carried boxes from cars and vans. Music played from someone's phone, traditional songs from their homeland that filled Tariq with nostalgia, but struck Patricia as ominous. Patricia watched the gathering from her kitchen window, heart pounding, when one of the men carried in a large, heavy-looking metal case. Her imagination ignited. She didn't recognize it as the toolbox it was. Instead, she saw contraband, weapons, danger. With trembling fingers, she dialed 911. "I need to report suspicious activity," she said, voice quavering with what sounded like genuine fear. "The Middle Eastern family that just moved in has gathered a large group of men. They're carrying in heavy metal containers and speaking in code. I think they might be a terrorist cell." The dispatcher asked clarifying questions, but Patricia had an answer for everything. She mentioned suspicious midnight activities and surveillance of the neighborhood. She referenced news stories about sleeper cells in suburban America. Her voice broke as she said, "Please, I'm afraid for my children, for all of us." The police arrived 30 minutes later, 2 patrol cars, officers approaching cautiously. They found a family gathering children playing in the backyard, women arranging food on a table, men replacing rotted wood on the deck. The Hakims were confused, then horrified as officers questioned them about the gathering. Tariq explained patiently, showing ID, introducing family members, even offering the officers food. The police, finding nothing suspicious, apologized for the intrusion. As they left, Tariq noticed Patricia watching from her window. Understanding dawned on his face, a mix of disappointment and resignation that spoke of similar experiences in the past. That might have been the end of it. But Patricia, embarrassed and defensive, doubled down. That evening, she posted in several local Facebook groups and on Nextdoor. Urgent possible terrorist cell in Oak Ridge Estates. Police investigation inconclusive. They're clearly well-trained. Stay vigilant." She included the Hakim's address. By morning, the post had been shared hundreds of times, reaching far beyond their immediate community. A local news station mentioned community concerns about new residents, without naming the family. But most dangerously, the post reached the feeds of several militia groups already primed to respond to perceived threats. James Radcliffe, leader of a group calling themselves the Mapleton Minutemen, saw the post while drinking his morning coffee. A former military contractor with a grudge against the government and a YouTube channel dedicated to homeland defense, Radcliffe had been looking for an opportunity to demonstrate his group's purpose. "This is it, boys," he messaged his followers. "Real threat, real community, real time to step up." The first trucks arrived Tuesday morning, 3 pickup trucks with men in tactical gear, armed with semi-automatic rifles. They parked across the street from the Hakim's house, watching. By afternoon, more had joined them. Inside the house, the Hakim family huddled in fear. Tariq had called the police, but was told that as long as the men remained on public property and didn't directly threaten anyone, there was little officers could do. "They're just watching for now," Tariq told Amira, trying to sound calm. "The police know they're here." Layla peered through the blinds. "Dad, there are more coming." Zayn paced the living room. "We should leave. Go to Uncle Fahad's until this blows over. And let them drive us from our home." Tariq shook his head. "No, we've done nothing wrong." But by evening, the situation had escalated. The militia members approached neighbors, asking questions about the Hakims, showing printed copies of Patricia's posts. Some neighbors shut their doors. Others talked, adding their own observations. Often innocent activities recast as suspicious through the lens of fear. Walter, their elderly neighbor, confronted the group. "You're harassing innocent people," he shouted, standing in his driveway. "They're a family fixing up a house, for God's sake." One of the militiamen stepped toward Walter, looming over him. "Stay out of this, old man. You could be harboring enemies and not even know it." Walter didn't back down. "The only enemies I see are men with guns threatening my neighbors." The confrontation drew others outside. Some supported Walter. Others sided with the militia. As voices raised, more people emerged from homes, forming loose groups on the street. Police arrived again, trying to disperse the growing crowd. Inside her house, Patricia watched with a mixture of vindication and growing unease. She hadn't expected this level of response, but told herself it confirmed her suspicions. "See," she told Greg, "if they weren't guilty, why would all these patriots be here?" Greg stared at her, disbelief on his face. "Patriots. They're armed vigilantes. Patty, what have you done?" By Wednesday, the situation had metastasized. News vans joined the pickups lining the street. Militia numbers had grown to over 50. Counter-protesters arrived, standing in solidarity with the Hakim family. Police established a perimeter, but tensions flared repeatedly. More ominously, similar gatherings began at other locations across Mapleton. A mosque received threatening calls. A Middle Eastern restaurant had its windows broken. International grocery stores closed early after men with guns parked in their lots. The city's significant immigrant population retreated indoors as armed patrols moved through several neighborhoods. Mayor Eleanor Chen called an emergency meeting with the police chief and city council. "This is spiraling beyond our control," she said, gesturing to a map marked with incident locations. "We're outnumbered and outgunned. These militia groups are coordinating across platforms we can't monitor effectively." Police Chief Davis looked grim. We've called in officers from neighboring jurisdictions, but they're facing similar issues. These aren't just local yahoos. They're coming in from across the state, even neighboring states. Who's coordinating them? Asked a council member. Multiple groups, Davis replied. But they're rallying around this social media post about a supposed terrorist cell. Complete fabrication. But that doesn't matter now. The narrative has taken on a life of its own. What about the family at the center of this? Mayor Chen asked. We've offered evacuation, but the father refused. Said they haven't done anything wrong and won't be driven from their home. We have officers stationed there, but if the crowd decides to move... He didn't finish the sentence. That night, confrontations between militia members and counter-protesters escalated to physical altercations. Police used pepper spray to separate groups. 3 people were hospitalized. Videos of the chaos spread across social media, drawing more people to Mapleton, some to join the militia, others to stand against them. By Thursday morning, the governor declared a state of emergency and activated the National Guard. Major highways into Mapleton were closed. The mayor imposed a curfew. Inside their home, now effectively under siege, the Hakim family endured their 3rd day of captivity. Food was running low. Zane had developed a persistent cough from stress. Layla hadn't slept in days. Amira moved through the house like a ghost, keeping curtains drawn, jumping at every sound. Tariq sat at the kitchen table, face in his hands. Perhaps we were wrong to stay. Amira placed a hand on his shoulder. We couldn't have known it would become this. A knock at the back door startled them. They froze until a voice called softly, Tariq, it's Walter. They found the old man at their back door with grocery bags and a grim expression. Came through the yards, he explained as they let him in. Figured you might need supplies. As Walter unpacked bread, milk, and canned goods, he delivered news from outside. National Guard's coming. FBI too. This has gotten bigger than anyone expected. Because of us, Layla asked, voice small. Not because of you, Walter said firmly. Because of hatred and fear. You're just the excuse. While the situation in Mapleton deteriorated, FBI agents had been quietly investigating the origin of the crisis. They traced Patricia's posts and followed digital breadcrumbs to unexpected connections. On Friday morning, Special Agent Diana Martinez briefed her team in a command center established at the Mapleton courthouse. Patricia Whitman didn't act alone, she explained, pulling up financial records on a screen. 3 months ago, she joined an online group called American Neighborhoods First. It presents as a community watch organization, but actually funnels money to known hate groups. She flipped to another screen showing email exchanges. Whitman received templates for how to report suspicious foreigners in suburban neighborhoods. The goal is creating exactly this type of situation: community division, militia presence, chaos. They've attempted similar operations in 12 other cities this year. She was a pawn, asked another agent. A willing one, Martinez replied. The evidence suggests she harbored these prejudices already. They just gave her a playbook and encouragement. But here's where it gets interesting. She displayed a network diagram. The militia response wasn't spontaneous. It was pre-planned. James Radcliffe, leader of the largest militia present, received funding from the same sources as American Neighborhoods First. They were waiting for an opportunity like this. So this whole situation was engineered to create maximum division and destabilization. Yes, the playbook calls it community fracturing. Create an incident, amplify it through social media, trigger a militia response, force authorities into a no-win situation, and destroy trust between citizens and institutions. And the endgame? Martinez's expression darkened. Political chaos that benefits extremist agendas. Mapleton is just one battle in a larger war. While the FBI built its case, conditions in the city reached a breaking point. Militia checkpoints had effectively divided Mapleton into controlled zones. Residents couldn't reach workplaces or shopping centers. Schools closed. Hospital staff struggled to report for shifts. The initial issue, the Hakim family, had been almost forgotten as the occupation took on its own momentum. Friday evening, as National Guard units established positions throughout the city, Mayor Chen addressed the nation from the steps of City Hall, flanked by community leaders, the police chief, and the commander of the National Guard forces. Mapleton has been drawn into a conflict based on lies, she said, her voice steady despite visible exhaustion. A single family moving into a neighborhood has been transformed, through malice and manipulation, into an imagined threat that has paralyzed our city and divided our community. She gestured to the religious and community leaders beside her: Christian, Jewish, Muslim, and secular representatives standing shoulder to shoulder. We reject this manufactured crisis. We reject those who would use our differences to divide us. And we call on all citizens of Mapleton to return to their homes, to put down weapons, and to remember who we truly are: neighbors, colleagues, friends, one community with a shared future. As she spoke, FBI agents were executing search warrants at Patricia Whitman's home and at militia staging areas throughout the city. Evidence was collected: communications, financial records, weapons. Patricia, stunned and protesting her innocence, was taken into custody as news cameras captured her being escorted to a waiting vehicle. "This is a mistake," she shouted. "I was protecting my community. I was the only one brave enough to speak up." Special Agent Martinez guided her into the back seat. "Mrs. Whitman, you're being charged with making false statements to law enforcement, incitement to violence, and conspiracy against civil rights. You have the right to remain silent." The militia response to the arrests and National Guard presence varied. Some groups, seeing the overwhelming force arrayed against them, quietly disbanded and left the city. Others, particularly those led by James Radcliffe, dug in, claiming government oppression and vowing resistance. The confrontation that many feared came at dawn on Saturday. National Guard units approached the largest militia encampment, established in a park near the Hakim's neighborhood. Using loudspeakers, they ordered the armed men to lay down weapons and disperse. For 20 tense minutes, it seemed violence was inevitable. Militia members took defensive positions. Guardsmen advanced methodically. Journalists and residents watched from behind barricades, many filming with phones. The standoff broke not with gunfire, but with conversation. A National Guard captain removed his helmet and walked forward, hands visible, asking to speak with Radcliffe. Their discussion, captured on dozens of cameras, lasted 15 minutes. What was said remained private between the two men, but the result was clear. Radcliffe ordered his followers to stand down. As militia members were processed, some arrested for outstanding warrants or weapons violations. Others simply identified and released attention, turned to healing the city's wounds. The physical occupation had ended, but the psychological and social damage remained. Sunday morning. 1 week after Patricia's fateful call to 911, an extraordinary scene unfolded at the Hakim family's home. Dozens of neighbors arrived, carrying food, tools, paint, and plants. Without formal organization, They began completing the home improvements. The family had started painting walls, fixing gutters, planting flowers in the barren yard. Walter directed operations from a lawn chair, pointing younger volunteers toward tasks with the authority of a general. By afternoon, the house's exterior had been transformed. Inside, women from the neighborhood helped Amira arrange furniture and hang curtains. Children played together in the backyard, including Zain and Layla, who smiled for the first time in days. Tariq moved through the crowd, shaking hands, learning names, repeating thank you in a voice thick with emotion. When asked why he hadn't fled during the crisis, he said simply, "This is our home. Running away would mean they won." As volunteers shared a community meal on the newly repaired deck, Mayor Chen arrived with a potted olive tree, a traditional symbol of peace. "On behalf of Mapleton," she said, presenting it to the family, "I apologize for what you've endured, and thank you for your courage." The following weeks brought both justice and reconciliation. Federal prosecutors announced indictments against Patricia Whitman, James Radcliffe, and 14 others involved in orchestrating the crisis. Charges included civil rights violations, making false statements to law enforcement, inciting violence, and conspiracy. More broadly, investigations expanded into the network of organizations that had funded and coordinated the operation. Patricia, released on bail pending trial, found herself increasingly isolated. Neighbors who had once joined her coffee clutches now crossed the street to avoid her. Her husband Greg filed for separation. Her adult children publicly disavowed her actions. The gravity of what she had unleashed, and her role as both perpetrator and pawn, gradually sank in, replacing righteous indignation with the beginning glimmers of remorse. For Mapleton as a whole, recovery took many forms. Community forums brought residents together to discuss the tensions that had existed long before the crisis. Schools implemented new programs emphasizing cultural awareness and media literacy. Religious communities opened their doors to one another for shared meals and conversations. The city established a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, modeled on successful examples from around the world. Its sessions, sometimes painful but always revealing, allowed citizens to speak openly about prejudices, fears, and misunderstandings that had contributed to the crisis. 3 months after the National Guard withdrew, Mapleton hosted a community resilience festival in the same park where militia members had camped. Thousands attended, sampling foods from the city's diverse cultural traditions, watching performances, and visiting information booths set up by community organizations. The Hakim family staffed a table, offering coffee prepared in the style of their homeland. A line formed, people waiting not just for the aromatic beverage, but for the chance to introduce themselves properly to their neighbors. Layla, now more confident after joining her school's diversity council, explained the coffee preparation to curious visitors. Zain displayed photographs documenting both the crisis and the recovery, an exhibit that would later be shown at the City Museum as part of Mapleton's commitment to remembering hard truths. Amira served cookies she'd baked using her grandmother's recipe, sharing stories of her childhood and drawing connections between her homeland's traditions and American customs. "Not so different," she told a group of women who had gathered around her table. "Family, food, celebration. These are universal." Tariq, standing slightly apart, watched his family engage with their community. Walter joined him, leaning on a cane. "Never thought I'd see this," the old man said, gesturing toward the festival. "Not after what happened." "The worst moments can bring out the best in people," Tariq replied. "Or at least, they can create an opportunity for change." "You're more forgiving than I would be." Tariq was quiet for a moment before responding. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to be defined by what was done to you. My children will grow up remembering both the hatred and the healing. I hope the healing leaves the deeper mark. As evening approached, Mayor Chen took the festival stage for a brief address. Behind her stood community leaders, including Tariq, who had reluctantly accepted her invitation to join the city's newly formed Community Relations Board. 6 months ago, Mapleton became a symbol of division, she began. Today, we're working to become a model of reconciliation, not by pretending our differences don't exist, but by recognizing that our diversity is our strength when we choose understanding over fear. She gestured toward the Hakim family in the front row. Our newest residents endured the worst of what fear and prejudice can create. Yet they stayed. They forgave. They engaged. Their courage challenges all of us to be better neighbors and better citizens. As applause rippled through the crowd, Tariq noticed a familiar figure at the edge of the gathering, Patricia Whitman, standing alone, uncertain. Their eyes met briefly. He gave a small, solemn nod. Not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement. Recognition of her humanity, despite her actions. Patricia didn't approach the festival. She turned and walked away, shoulders hunched. Her journey toward understanding and atonement would be long and might never be complete. But the fact that she had come at all suggested the possibility of change, however difficult. After the speeches, as music filled the park and families spread blankets for the evening concert, Tariq rejoined his family. Layla had made friends with several classmates who now sat in a circle, teaching each other games from their various cultural backgrounds. Zain was deep in conversation with members of the University Photography Club who had invited him to join their next exhibition. Amira slipped her hand into Tariq's. "It feels like we might truly belong here someday," she said softly. "Not someday," he corrected, watching the diverse crowd around them. People who had stood with them during the darkest days, who had helped rebuild not just their house, but their sense of security. We belong here now. This is home. As darkness fell, lanterns illuminated the park. The music shifted to a collaborative piece specifically composed for the festival, a blend of musical traditions from the many cultures represented in Mapleton. On a grassy hill overlooking the celebration, the Hakim family sat together, surrounded by new friends and neighbors. Their faces, lit by lantern light, reflected not the trauma of recent months, but cautious hope for the future. The crisis had revealed the worst and best of their adopted community. Fear had nearly destroyed it. Courage, compassion, and justice were rebuilding it, not as it had been before, with tensions hidden beneath a veneer of civility, but as something more honest, more resilient, and ultimately more American in the truest sense of that complex identity. A local choir took the stage, voices raised in harmony. Among them was Walter's granddaughter, who had been practicing for weeks. The old man wiped tears from his eyes as the music swelled. Next to him, Zain recorded the performance, documenting not just the event, but the moment when a community consciously chose a different path forward. The song spoke of bridges between people, of walls torn down, of the difficult but essential work of truly seeing one another across divides of culture, religion, and experience. As the final notes faded into the night air, the audience rose in a standing ovation that carried a deeper meaning than mere appreciation for the performance. It was an affirmation, a community's promise to itself. Mapleton had glimpsed its own destruction and pulled back from that precipice. The work of healing would continue long after the festival ended. But tonight, under stars visible to all, regardless of origin or belief. They celebrated the simple, powerful truth that had nearly been forgotten: they were neighbors, with a shared future worth building together. For the Hakim family, their American story had taken an unexpected and painful turn. But as they joined hands with those around them for the festival's closing ceremony, a simple ritual of unity, where each person held a small light, they recognized that the narrative was continuing, not ending. The light spread through the crowd, person to person, until the park glowed with thousands of individual flames that together created something greater than their sum. In that moment of connection, the past few months, with all their fear, violence, and division, seemed to recede, not forgotten, but transcended. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them not as strangers in a hostile land, but as members of a community that had been tested and transformed by crisis. Tariq looked at his wife and children, their faces illuminated by the warm glow of their lights, and felt a certainty settle in his heart. This was indeed home, not despite what had happened, but because of how they had all, together, chosen to move forward from it.